All right. What is good, everybody? Let's get right into it. We're gonna be watching Myron and his brother break down this upcoming Israel and Iran war, and we're gonna watch Nick talk about the U.S. attacking the Iranian dome. So we got two videos to get through today. So let's get through it on this good old Wednesday.
The bitch shaking it, showing it. You this, you that. We laughing at them together. Oh! So stop treating these mother like they mean something.
Let's go to TikTok. All right. Now I want to say I really don't know what they're talking about because we haven't, besides the fucking title. But I want to say they're breaking it down or of why it's happening. So yeah, let's see what they got to say.
You guys know there's been quite a bit of tension between the United States and Iran. We've mobilized an enormous amount of assets into the Persian Gulf to be within striking distance of Iran. Now, it's important to note that we've had issues with Iran for several decades, okay? We had them sanctioned to hell. We're going to talk about the JCPOA here in a little bit. But just as far as like a bird's eye view of where we are now, we're in a very volatile time. And this grows amid tensions because this all started, guys, with October 7th, right? So when October 7th happened, it gave the Israelis the license to go after all of their enemies who they claim is backed by Iran, right? As you guys know, they always say Iran is the #1 funder of terrorism. They fund Hamas, they fund Hezbollah, they fund the Houthis, and all of these different groups attack Israel, right? Because they stand in solidarity with the Palestinians and their occupation of the Palestinians. So what ended up happening was after October 7th happened, to give you guys a quick summary, the Israelis went into Gaza. They dismantled Hamas, killed their leadership, assassinated Ismail Haniyeh in Iran, killed Yahya Sinwar by luck. Then they began a campaign to invade Lebanon. They went into Lebanon and did a ground assault and were able to do the ground assault while simultaneously running the pager attacks and also doing airstrikes. These airstrikes killed Hassan Nasrallah, the longtime head of Hezbollah, which was a huge blow on top of killing a bunch of higher-ranking guys with the pager attack. This demoralized them. Now, Hezbollah was able—
If y'all didn't know about the pager attack is when they did a 10-year pager plan where they had all the pagers that Hezbollah agents were using. They put like bombs in them from basically 10 years ago and activated them all at the same time to basically take out most of the Hezbollah operatives.
Able to put up a pretty good fight on the ground, but they ended up having a ceasefire, right? So the Israelis withdrew, Hezbollah stopped bombing them, even though Israel's still bombing them now. And this led directly to the fall of Syria. So basically within a 2-year span, guys, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Syria were all destabilized. Bashar al-Assad was run out of there. Ahmed al-Shara came in. Ahmed al-Shara is friendly with the U.S. and with Israel. I have no doubt in my mind that the Israelis coordinated with Ahmed al-Shara and HTS to attack the Syrian government right after the Hezbollah ceasefire because Hezbollah was weakened and they didn't want Hezbollah to be able to rearm and restock. So they ended up doing that. And then—
Hold up. Move this over here.
after all of that was done, very key here, the United States was in the middle of talks with Iran for a nuclear deal, right? And in the middle of these talks, the Israelis did a sneak attack on the Israelis. They activated a bunch of operatives behind enemy lines. The operatives destroyed the air defense, jammed radars, destroyed several key locations, and then on top of that, most importantly, they killed a bunch of scientists and high-ranking generals. It was literally the Pearl Harbor for Iran. Now, miraculously, within 24 hours, Iran hit Israel back very hard and did quite a bit of damage, okay? And that retaliation from Iran has made the Israelis extremely cautious on how they want to move now, okay? So fast forward, to where we are now. Benjamin Netanyahu came at the end of the year for New Year's to meet with Trump, right? Presumably, they had met to talk about the Hezbollah disarming in Lebanon. But whenever Netanyahu comes here, guys, it's really to, prepare for a war with Iran. He'll say, oh, yeah, well, Hamas peace deal and all this stuff. But the real reason he's here is to, formulate a plan against these guys. So what ended up happening instead was the United States said, we're going to go ahead and, show some aggression here, which is what they did. They mobilized, this whole armada into the Persian Gulf. And that's kind of where we are now. And earlier today, there was an agreement made for them to start talking and having talks about their nuclear program in Turkey. Okay. Now, let's be honest. The last time they had talks about their nuclear program, the Israelis used this as an opportunity to attack them. So I don't think the Iranians trust the United States, but I think both parties are using this as a stall tactic. So, but anyway, I'll turn it to you, bro. Go ahead. You said you have an article here. You can go through it.
Yeah, so I'll read the article. Yeah, that's a great summary. And what I'll do here for you guys.
But last nuclear talk, like that last deal they talked, Trump literally was like, I was just using that deal to stop. Like that's like he's already came out and said like I was using that as a fake out. So why would they trust this deal? It doesn't make any sense. They're definitely using this as a stall out. They definitely don't trust the U.S. isn't going to attack.
Guys, I'll read this article and just to give you guys a foundation and a framing as to what's happening right now. And then from there, you'll be able to understand my explanation because I'm going to go into some of the history as to how we kind of got here in terms of tension with Iran. So here, and you're going to be able to see this too. Share. All right. Propped on my screen.
Yeah,
so
I can see it.
Here we read, all right, everything should be good. Here we read Trump Iran latest. U.S. president says big ships are heading to Iran right now, but talks over nuclear deal continue, like we were saying today. So this article was written today. Donald Trump has warned that, quote, big ships, end quote, are heading to Iran. Big ships, but said talks on a potential nuclear deal with Tehran are ongoing. Speaking to reporters on Monday, the U.S. president said, quote, we will see how it works out, end quote, when asked if Washington would take military action. His comments came after it was announced that envoy Steve Witkoff would meet with Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi on Friday for talks on a nuclear deal, according to a report. This guy actually tweeted and said that the talks are progressing as well. Furthermore, sources told Axios that the pair would meet in Istanbul to discuss the future of Tehran's nuclear program following repeated threats by Washington of military intervention. It would represent the first meeting with U.S. and Iranian officials since Tehran's 12-day war with Israel and the U.S. last June, which saw Washington bomb Iran's nuclear facilities, by the way, in which nothing was accomplished. Tensions are running high amid a military buildup by the U.S. Navy near Iran.
Remember I said why they said Trump did that, quotation marks, why Trump did that, because basically he was trying to say he stopped World War III or whatever, but in reality he just stalling time for when Israel just really that's what I want to say. He's like just stalled, like I want to say he stopped because he's not gonna, because basically just wasting time. He basically just stalled because Israel was like, if you don't bomb Iran we're gonna nuke them. So U.S. bombs them. They stall. They bomb they say that they bombed them and they don't hit nothing. And then Israel calms down.
Following a violent crackdown against anti-government demonstrations last month, Trump threatened to launch strikes against the regime over the killing of protesters, but later appeared to back down. So how did we get here, and how are we having this large naval presence in the Persian Gulf currently? There's a few reasons why, and I bet a lot of you guys are going to be able to guess how we got here anyways, but I'll tie a nice, neat bow on it. All right, so first and foremost, protests started at the beginning of the year. So moving on from 2026, we notice a lot of tensions growing in Iran with protests against the regime for the reasons that the U.S. media frames as bad governance, terrorism, things of that nature, which to some degree are true. There has been some incompetence of the Ayatollah regime from their inception, really, in 1979, after the revolution, which, by the way, was caused and fueled by United States intelligence paired along with the MI6 and the Mossad. But regardless, that's neither here nor there. It's obvious that people are frustrated with the regime's incompetency, which to some degree is true. But there's a whole other element to this. The middle class in Iran, and really the low class, and most citizens for that matter, are struggling. And that's because of the economic sanctions that the United States and other world powers have placed on Iran. This was all figured out. There was a step taken to hopefully diffuse all of this in 2015 with Obama, which many of you may know, but I'm sure a lot of you may have never heard of this. It's called the JCPOA, or the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Several countries were on it. I think Germany, France, so on and so forth, the EU. I can't remember all of them, but a lot of countries were on board. And to simplify it and broaden it, just so you get the bigger picture here, the point of the proposal by Obama, by the way, he has some of the worst foreign policy we've ever seen, but this was actually one of the better things that he did later on in his presidency before he left and gave it to Trump, was the deal laid out a trade-off. You halt your nuclear program in Iran and stop your enrichment of uranium. You also oblige to us conducting visits or visitation and surveilling your nuclear weaponry and making sure you're not progressing or advancing.
Which they said yes to.
In turn, we will lift economic sanctions off of you. Iran obliged. Through some talks, they were able to come to an agreement, and every country was happy. This seemed like this was the first step towards the impossible stability of the Middle East and hopefully bringing peace to the region between two major tensions being Israel and Iran. There's one country, of course, that was mad. That was Israel. Now, precisely why were they mad? Because a lot of people would look at this at face value and think, well, that doesn't really make much sense because they were going to stop their nukes, or they were at least going to put a halt to the program. And that's the main concern of Israel. Partially. The issue is there was no talks of anything in regards to completely diffusing their ballistic missiles program, which, if you guys don't know, they have the best missiles program in the world. And they even supplied missiles to Russia, which I believe they've been using in Ukraine. But
The drones, yeah.
the economic sanctions being lifted would allow Iran to bolster their already existing and strong proxies. These proxy networks consist of Hezbollah, which is in southern Lebanon, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and then the Houthis in Yemen. And in lifting these economic sanctions, Israeli officials were worried that that would be able to embolden and empower these military groups with more military capability. And so they fought back on this hard. Benjamin Netanyahu was infuriated. Israeli officials were livid, and they knew that Obama was exiting his term anyways. And so they were just going to have to bank on the next president to get this out of office. So Trump rolls around in 2016, and obviously Trump won for many reasons. And he gave.
And this is important that you're going to say this, because this is actually what got him to win, chat. Like, we talk a lot about Trump, you know, when the upset with Hillary or whatever. And a lot of, you know, big Trump supporters will say, well, Trump always wanted to pull out the JCPOA. He always was anti-Iran. That is precisely why he got the Zionist vote. But
Exactly.
Go ahead. Keep going.
No, exactly. And I mentioned this earlier. So now I'm going to be able to tie it all together. And don't worry, I'll finish this all and put a nice, neat bow on it so you guys have a better idea of the grand scheme of things. But the donors that were getting behind Trump, of course, were whispering in his ear. And we didn't know this at the time, but this is speculative. And it's obvious that we can point to the truth now because of what's been unfolding in the last 6 months with the war in Iran, at least the shadow war that's about to become physical in a moment, that these donors were definitely instilling Trump to get rid of this plan, tarnish it completely. We don't want the JCPOA. We don't want Iran to have economic sanctions lifted. We don't want them to normalize relations with the United States, which that plan was intended to do. Now, some may argue, well, you know, it is true the plan is kind of unfair because it allows Iran to hopefully bolster their proxies. You got to realize Iran is not going to be the country to trust the U.S. right off of the bat. So the fact that we could get them to agree to something was a huge step in the right direction. Remember, this is the country that we had launched coups in, meddled elections in, just like several other countries. And so there's no reason for Iran to trust us, being that we're the direct military backer of Israel that's been giving them problems for decades upon decades. And so the fact that they even came to the table and said yes to this deal was a big deal, something that a lot of people don't realize, and it goes over a lot of people's heads. And so after Trump was elected, slowly but surely, he didn't do it right away.
And that's why he campaigned, by the way, guys, with pulling out of the deal. That was a big reason why he campaigned, was to get that support from the Zionist lobby.
Yes,
that's why a lot of them pulled from Hillary and they went to Trump. That was instrumental in his campaign strategy.
And that's a theme, by the way, with really rich billionaire American people. They will always shift political parties just in regards to whoever has the better favorment of Israel. In this case, it was Trump. But if somebody on the left is talking a lot better than somebody on the right in favor of Israel, then they'll absolutely go in that direction. So that's what won Trump the election. He was given.
There's a donor class in America. The bottom line is this, guys. There's a donor class in America that literally votes only on foreign policy when it comes to favoring Israel. And there's a lot of them. And they have a lot of money and they have a lot of power. They're Americans, but they only care about foreign policy when it comes to the Middle East and Israel. And there's a lot of people that are like this. And guess what? These people tend to have the biggest purse strings. But keep going, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And so little, what do you know? Moving on into, I believe it was 2018. I think of the date, if my memory serves me right, it was May 5th, 2018. Donald Trump comes out to the press and he says the JCPOA is off. We are no longer sharing any sort of relationship with Iran. And matter of fact, the cherry on top, the IRGC is now a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
So not only did Donald Trump
thank Mike Pompeo for that one.
Yes, not only did Donald Trump put economic sanctions back on Iran, but he also said that their IRGC, their military guard corps, was a terrorist organization, which pretty much progressed into this whole escalation of tension in the region, which eventually led to us killing all of these really powerful assets that held together the axis of resistance, for lack of a better term, the factions or the military networks that kept Israel at bay or were the last leg of support for the Arab Muslim world. Qasem Soleimani, Hassan Nasrallah, like you mentioned, and many others, these people were the leaders of the axis of resistance and kept that charge alive. And so moving forward, obviously, Trump does this deal and things go exactly back to how you would imagine in Iran. The sanctions are put, and slowly but surely, the people who feel this the most are actually the civilians more so than the government. And so groceries are expensive, this whole thing, life is difficult, and that causes civil unrest. Pay attention here. This is Israel's strategy from the beginning. The reason that they don't want Iran to have a flourishing economy is because that will cause civil unrest, which will in turn make it easier for them to overthrow that regime because they'll have to work a lot less hard. So this was all a part of their plan, and it's brilliant. It was methodical. So moving forward, and I'll fast forward a lot here because a lot of this is just kind of a brush in the weeds. It's not too important, but we get to October 7th. Now, this is a huge turning point in, of course, history as we know it, but more so the state of Iran and Israel. Reason being, obviously, Hamas just paraglided Fortnite style into Israel and wreaked havoc. And by the way, I am 100% a believer that Israeli officials and Israeli intelligence had the head start or had the drop on this.
I was
but
about to
let it
say
happen
they Israel let it happen because they wanted everybody to see, or not see, but they wanted to be able to retaliate the way that they did.
because they
Bro,
wanted
even the
to exacerbate
Egyptians,
it.
even the Egyptians warned them. The Egyptians' intelligence services warned the Israelis that an attack was imminent. And the reason why they did that is because the Egyptians understand that their foreign aid is contingent upon playing nice with Israel. So they didn't want none of that bullshit on their table. So they said, nope, we're not going to mess with our foreign aid. Hey, Israelis, these dudes are about to invade y'all. And they still didn't heed that order.
Exactly. And they wanted this to happen. They wanted the problem to exacerbate because they would have so much more of justification in invading Iran eventually, which is unfolding today. But October 7th happens, tension in the region is at a sky high and all this crazy stuff. But this pretty much emboldens Israel to push Trump, who is later elected because Biden was in office at the time of October 7th. And Biden still bolstered Israel and gave them a huge package, I think $12 billion, if my memory serves me correctly, on the spot, lump sum, and was helping them out. We gave them tons of military aid, and they wreaked havoc and turned Gaza into a parking lot. But moving forward, you see that we had tensions with Iran, and we bombed their nuclear facility. This was back in the summer. And this all was enabled by that October 7th attack, which, again, I believe Israel really wanted to happen, and so they never got involved. And this gave them so much more justification. Now, after that strike in Iran, and by the way, there's this weird, like, I think the Epstein files were making headway at that time, and now the Epstein files are making headway again. But regardless, there is this connection to the JCPOA being the first and really one of the most important steps in stability in the Middle East, and that being tarnished by these donors allowed for this war to happen today. And that's the problem with everybody who's upset with Trump. I think something that's really important goes over their head. You got to understand this. Donald Trump is at the center of two opposing factions. You've got the America Firsters on one side pulling his arm, people like Nick, who are the leading voice for this cause, and paleo conservatives who kind of pioneered this whole movement, like Pat Buchanan and so on. These guys don't want intervention, at least in the Middle East for that matter, and they don't want their borders open. They don't want illegals here. They want all of these policies to be fulfilled, in which Trump, by the way, campaigned on very hard and promised he would deliver. He also said no new wars. So he pandered very methodically to that crowd. But on the other side of these two parties, you've got the donors that said, hey, remember what you promised us.
And that's all we've been doing is fucking going to war.
You better deliver, and you better take care of business in Iran. something that's really important to remember as well. We are in the midterm season, and it's coming around the corner before you know it. We'll be at the point where I think Democrats are going to take a majority of the House and Senate. This is important to understand. I do believe, and this is speculation, I don't really have smoking gun evidence for this, but this is just kind of where the wind has been blowing. I think at this point, Trump knows he's cooked and he looks really bad optically. I think that Marjorie Greene and others kind of paved the way for Trump to eventually probably, hopefully not, but he's going to get indicted and impeached. And I think right now,
Yeah, because I forgot who was asking him the questions at the White House when he was in office about the Epstein files, and he was like, y'all should just need to just get over it. Like, we need to get on with that. Like, we need to get over that. Like, we need to, like, I was like, oh shit. Not this nigga don't want to answer the question. He's like, we need to just, come on, guys. Y'all still on that? Stupid ass.
now Trump is at a crossroads where he can
Stupid.
commit political by going forward and actually attacking Iran. What I think, though, is at this point, the
My
better
block,
thing
I
to
see you
lean
with the
on
follow,
for
my boy.
Trump is his donors, because he's lost support from everybody else. The Epstein files make him look horrible. He's getting attacked from all directions. He's suing Trevor Noah. It's obvious that Trump has a lot of things on his plate, and this is hanging over his head. I don't think Trump is going to hesitate to attack Iran and think about the midterm repercussions, just because I think he lost regardless. At this point, if he does get impeached, if he does get indicted, at least he has his donors to rely on and take care of him. And those donors will hopefully help in keeping some of those Democrats out of the House and the Senate so Trump can maintain power moving into 2028 and hopefully hand the gloves off or the crown off to J.D. Vance. Because if J.D. Vance doesn't get elected, that whole Trump administration is going to jail.
Yeah.
Or they're getting federally indicted, and they're going to have years of hell ahead of them. Years of hell. So I think Trump is in a really, really difficult position right now. And this stems from not being centered in your beliefs and not having a core foundational set of ideas that you stick by. And that's kind of the redundant issue that we deal with in American politics. But that's the problem with Trump, is he's being pulled in several directions right now. And he's backing away from his America First position anyways. With the whole Alex Preddy situation, he didn't double down and stand on business. When press asked him, what do you think about the situation? He went on to say that, you know, it was unfortunate, in which it was. I absolutely agree. And it was a tragedy. And he says, oh, well, we'll investigate and we'll see. And I think in a moment like that, it would have been a lot more beneficial or important for Trump to say, listen, I believe the shooting was justified. It was an unfortunate set of circumstances and it shouldn't have happened, but you can't get involved with federal law enforcement doing their job in a really tense situation. And the fact that he didn't say something along those lines, I think, is a telltale sign that he's going to pull back ICE enforcement at some point, whether it's now or later. The protests are getting crazy in Minnesota and other major cities in the United States.
Well, of course he's gonna pull back ICE enforcement because all the immigrants gotta come over here. That's what they want. That's what them boys want. They want us to be diversified and multicultural and, you know, multiracial. So that's, of course he's gonna pull back on deporting niggas, because that's
Trump
what them
is
boys
just
want.
probably going to entirely lean on his donors and his foreign policy that he stuck through with, because if there's one side that he's given more headway to, I mean, it's definitely the doning side. It's definitely the Israeli side. We have the biggest naval presence we've ever had right now in the Persian Gulf. And I think at the drop of a hat, we're going to attack. Maybe not right now, because I feel like the world is ready. And it was similar with Venezuela. We kind of built up a military presence in August, but we attacked later. It'll probably be similar here. If we don't attack now, expect it in the spring. But hopefully, and we're going to get into this now, hopefully these peace talks bring about some sort of agreement that can at least delay this. But I'll tell you right now, Israel's not having it. Benjamin Netanyahu's not having it, and the military officials in Israel are not having it.
I'm telling you, he's mad because Trump claimed that he bombed the facility. He didn't really bomb the facility. It was just a fake out. And now Israel's like, no, we need to handle this. Like, I'm not playing anymore. I know you was lying when you said you bombed the facility. You didn't bomb shit. So that's basically all this is right now. Like, they're like not. They're tired of waiting for them to actually bomb them.
They want this strike to happen as soon as possible. They want that regime out, and they want to get it while the fire and the coal is cooking. The protests are at an all-time high right now. They're saying 30,000 some odd people died. I think that's
cap. I was told that the protests are done for the most part. That's all propaganda.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been looking at Iranian television. They're saying the protests are done at this point.
So they've diffused, and there's actually an interesting reason as to why they've diffused. these protesters on the ground have reported back to reliable geopolitical analysts who have said, I think one of the guys' name, his last name is Parsi, I can't remember, but I saw a clip of him saying this and others. They were reporting that there was something really suspicious about these protests in people destroying mosques,
Yeah.
banks. Previously in 2009,
Telltale sign.
other protests, there were people who were frustrated and have had it with the regime, but never went to these lengths. And there's this weird calculated demolition that's been happening in these previous protests, as well as the inflated numbers. We see the inconsistencies. I think it's probably more like 5,000 or 6,000, which is too many. But that's precisely why the IRGC and the regime have been brutal in shutting people down and ultimately, in some cases, unfortunately, killing them, because they know that if these protests grab any sort of momentum, it will be a wide open door for Israel and the United States to spin the same lie they've been spinning and saying, we're going to liberate the people of Iran. The same way George Bush said, we're going to liberate the people of Iraq. We're going to liberate the people of Syria. We're going to liberate the people of Libya. Look at those countries now. We're going to liberate the people of Afghanistan. Look at those countries now. It's the same thing with Iran, and that's why the regime is so cautious. They watch all their partners, and not their partners, but their neighbors in the region get destroyed by the same lie. The people are oppressed. The people are struggling, when in reality, most people in Iran are actually just protesting because of the economic issues, not because they hate the regime. There is a fraction of them that do believe that. But, you know, with the rise of this Reza Shah guy and all that, this guy's planted by CIA and Mossad for that matter. I don't think that he actually has any organic favor in the Iranian civilian population. I think that he's a plant and they're waiting to put him in the right spot. They're not going to have him build down from the bottom, but they're just going to put him right at the top once they get rid of Ayatollah. So it's important to understand everything I just said, because this could have all been avoided if donors didn't get Trump to tarnish this plan that could have led us to peace. And I'm not saying this plan was perfect, but it was certainly a step in the right direction. So that's that.
So, no, great analysis, man. And guys, yes, that is my little brother. Make sure to support him. We come from good genes. So I do think it's important to understand also what they're going to negotiate. So the U.S. and Iran are going to meet in Turkey to start having talks. Now, this is what I think is going to happen, bro. I think we're still going to go to war, just not right now, right? Because the U.S., as usual, has a poison pill request. So this is what they want. They want zero uranium enrichment. They want limits on ballistic missile program. And they want ending support for the regional proxies. And basically, these are like the main things. And the biggest one I would say is they want restrictions on Iran's development and deployment of ballistic missiles, which could serve as delivery systems for nuclear weapons. So basically, bro, they want them.
That's why they were getting fucked. That's why that's why Israel was getting fucked when Iran was sending missiles, because they had the ballistic missiles and Israel didn't have enough missiles to fight, the defensive missiles to fight back against Iran. So that's why they're like, oh yeah, you can't enrich the uranium and you can't have the ballistic missiles, because they were getting fucked by them ballistics.
To limit their strongest asset. For those that don't know, Iran has one of the best missile programs in the world. Okay? They have intercontinental missiles, I think. They just successfully tested a Russian one not too long ago. They have hypersonic missiles. They got drones. They make a lot of their drones by themselves, right? So they're able to manufacture them for really cheap. So they have a very powerful and competent ballistic missile program. And they were able to show this ballistic missile program when they attacked Israel back in June. And not only did they attack Israel back, they Israel up, okay? So bad that Israeli media had to censor how badly they got hit. But here's the thing. How do I know that they hit them really hard? Think of it. Israel and the United States are thinking twice about attacking Iran this time, because the Iranians have said, look, if you hit us again, this isn't going to be a regular war. This is going to be a regional war, which means they're going to start blowing up oil fields. They're going to start attacking U.S. bases in the region. And the other thing, too, that I think is very important, because I've been watching Randy talk about this. And I know people are going to say, oh, he's an Iranian propagandist, whatever. That's cool. I watch everybody. I watch Fox News. I watch Randy. I watch Israeli television, etc. One thing that's true is this.
That'll be able to watch everybody.
Of Iranian ballistic missile assets are targeted at U.S. locations, okay? So their most capable weaponry is pointed at U.S. infrastructure. So if we do attack, they can absolutely level a lot of our military installments. And not only are they going to attack us militarily, they're going to create an economic nightmare for everybody, okay? And just so you guys know, like that area, the Strait of Hormuz, something like 30% of the world's oil goes through there, okay? We're talking about overnight gas prices shooting up to like $11, right, a gallon. So Iran's game, and I talked about this yesterday with you guys, it's asymmetric warfare because they don't have the capability of actually taking on the United States militarily. So what they have to do is they have to make it hurt for not just the United States, but everyone else. And this is why Trump is thinking twice before attacking them. I'm pretty confident that they wanted to attack earlier this year and kind of coincide the attacks with the protests, but the protests were not successful as they thought. Iran shut down the internet. That killed the protests quite a bit, and then they were able to arrest a bunch of these people, right? Yeah. So for the most part, they were trying to sync up the attacks alongside the protests, but the Iranians, with the help of the Chinese, by the way, they were able to shut down the internet, and then they also shut down Starlink.
Not shut down the internet. God damn.
So that is why I think the United States is like, all right, now we got to negotiate with these guys. But here's the problem. These things that they want, limits on the ballistic missile program, no uranium enrichment, right? Basically abandoning their nuclear program altogether, and then any support for the proxies, Iran's not going to agree to any of that because the proxies are what's kept them safe for the past 20 years.
They're not. They wasn't agreeing to that, but no ballistic, like limit on a ballistic. Are you crazy? That's what we was fucking y'all with. You're gonna make us not. We got to have a limit now. Yeah, you're crazy.
Basically created a ring of fire around the Israelis, right? The ballistic missile program, they're not going to limit that at all because that's their only defense.
Right.
You know, it's basically like, oh yeah, we're your enemy, but we want you guys to get rid of your strongest weapon against us that deters us, so we can attack you, right? And the United States has proven to not be trustworthy, so they're definitely not going to do that.
And what's worse is. Excuse me, I'm sorry, guys. What's worse is Israel has nuclear bombs. Like, they have nukes. Like, Israel has nukes. So why use? It's so annoying how they're like, wait, you can't have no nuke. You can't have no uranium while these niggas have uranium and nukes.
And then as far as like uranium enrichment, they're never going to stop their nuclear program. And to be honest with you guys, every country has a sovereign right to have, according to international law, to run a civilian nuclear program as well as be able to defend themselves with military might. So they're not going to agree to any of this, dude. So I think if anything, this is to stall for the United States. And then for the Iranians, it's good for them too, because the more they stall, the more they can get stronger and stronger. So,
yeah, exactly. And asking them to get rid of their military assets is, again, political unaliving. I don't know if I can say the S word on YouTube. So here's the thing. You're completely right. You said most of it. What I was going to say is Iran's ballistic missile program is really, really powerful. And not only did it penetrate the Iron Dome, it actually penetrated American defense military systems in Doha, in Qatar, when they bombed these Hamas members, or at least they attempted to kill them, and they killed other people in the process, which was insane. And these military assets are what keep Iran safe. This is political science 101. That's why they're racing towards a nuke for mutually assured destruction, because the only other country in that region that has a nuke, you guessed it, is Israel, by the way, which they illegally acquired, but that's a different story. And so because Israel has this nuke and every other country has been destroyed without going to the means of the nuke, Iran senses that if they don't get special arms really quickly and they don't gear up, they're going to be next on the list. And whether they're nuked or not, that's up for debate. But they need to acquire some sort of military presence that keeps Israel away. So for Trump to negotiate and say, you need to give up everything that keeps your regime in power is absurd. And they're never going to come to the table about that. Again, this is why I go back to the JCPOA.
I think they're just using this to attack us again. Not attack us. Sorry. The Iranians are looking at it like, yo, the United States is going to use these negotiations to find a weak point to attack us again. That's what they're thinking. Because literally, we attacked them.
That's literally what they're thinking. That's literally what I said before the show even started. Before we even, the first peace deal, my man's already came out and said, oh yeah, I was just faking so we could bomb you. Like, so why the fuck do you think they would come back and get slapped again? You think they're gonna just keep getting, like, do you motherfuckers think they're just gonna allow themselves to keep getting beat up
while they're in the middle of negotiations? And and I've noticed this with the U.S. too. Like, they will make a deal that's like just not, they're not going to accept that, dude. They're not going to get rid of their ballistic missile program. They're not going to get rid of their uranium enrichment. And they're definitely not going to stop funding the proxies, because the proxy is what's kept them safe for so long.
They can't. They literally can't, or they'll end up like all the other countries in the region. And I'm not.
And it's the only way that they can actually fight back against the West, because they've had like a four-pronged approach. Their ballistic missile program, the proxies, having uranium, and being a nuclear threshold state. This is precisely what's kept them from being toppled. So they're not going to go and make an agreement with the United States and Turkey to get rid of that. It's just not happening. So, and the U.S. does this all the time. If you remember, the last time they were in negotiations, there was talks about their nuclear program where the Saudi Arabians and other countries in the region would have certain components of their nuclear program for oversight, right?
Yeah.
The Iranians actually were like, maybe we'll agree to that. Then they changed it. Oh, no, we also want you to limit your ballistic missile program. So in other words, like they'll say, okay, we agree to this, and then they'll go ahead and add something else in, or they'll go back and change what they want. And they've been doing this for a very long time. And even Trump admitted, yeah, we tricked them, ha, ha, ha. We were doing these negotiations. He basically admitted that they were feigning diplomacy to allow the Israelis to attack them and catch them with their pants down.
Yeah, yeah. And who knows? This is speculation. I don't want to get too conspiratorial here. Who knows what Donald Trump is being told behind scenes, as well as these other guys in the United States government? I mean, Israel, I think it was 1973, the Yom Kippur War, they leveraged or they blackmailed us with their nuclear weapon. What had happened was they were getting destroyed by the Arab world. By the way, that was being supported by the Soviets. And so the United States conservative right and these Zionists kind of found a common enemy, or at least they had parallel interests. And so when the Yom Kippur War happened, Israel was getting attacked from all sides. I believe it was the Sinai, and then it was north. Syria was attacking them from the north, and Egypt was attacking them from the south. So they were getting bombarded, and they were getting crunched in, and they were winning. And so the prime minister at the time calls up who I believe was in
winning because they were still getting weapons from us.
This was Nixon, and he says, if you
It was Goldenmeyer was the PM.
Yes. And he calls up Nixon and he says, if you don't help us out right now, we are going to obliterate the entire Arab world. And they blackmailed us into helping them in that war. And we were forced to give them military assets, weaponry, armor, all this good stuff. And they were able to eventually push the Arabs out and win that war. And so who knows if that's what's happening right now, where you never know if there's talks behind the scenes of nuclear weapons potentially.
No. That is what happened, Riyadh. John Karakau confirmed this. The reason why Trump bombed Iran the way that he did was because the Israelis were threatening to use nuclear weapons against Iran because they're getting kicked in the 12-day war. Because as the war was getting worse and worse, right?
Bombs, I'm telling you, the ballistic missiles was getting, they were getting
going to be a lot harder to come by than drones and regular ballistic missiles. The Israelis were running out of interceptors. So they're like, okay, well, if the Iranians keep pummeling us like this, Tel Aviv won't exist. So they told Trump, we're going to use nuclear weapons if this war doesn't end. So that's what ended up happening, because people need to understand that in a war of attrition, the way that Israel and the Iranians were conducting warfare, it was all missiles, and
right?
air
It wasn't
defense and planes and shit like that.
There was no like ground, feet on the floor, soldiers, none of that shit. Iran was just sending fucking waves of missiles at Israel.
Fighter jets. So Israelis were sending fighter jets in and dropping bombs, shooting bombs at their strategic locations, and the Iranians were shooting ballistic missiles from different positions all across the country towards Israel. That's how the warfare was done. In that type of warfare, the Iranians benefit because interceptor missiles are way more expensive and difficult to acquire than missiles that they make at home, right? We're talking about hundreds of thousands of missiles that these guys have. So at some point, you're not going to be able to sustain that level of warfare in a battle of attrition. So that warfare actually favored the Iranians. And that's why Trump had to come in and hit them and then basically end the war, because the Israelis were threatening using a nuclear bomb, which makes sense. Because I wondered to myself, like, why the did...
But that's why we're still trying to go to war with them, because he didn't really hit them. And Israel knows that.
Trump bombed these guys. Like, this is very politically unfavorable. But now it makes sense. And, you know, you could kind of catch on, like, in the undertones. What did he say all the time? Oh, I saved the world. Oh, I ended the war. Oh, like I stopped something really bad from happening.
He's so vague. He's so vague.
Yeah, you know? So like now we know why.
There's truth to it. And yeah, that's crazy you say that. And that shows you that history is repeating itself.
Yeah, and Karakau is pretty, I would say he's fairly credible, former CIA guy. He admitted this in an interview. You know, he said that he heard it from, you know, people that he knows, that there was talks about using a nuclear weapon. And it makes sense because the Israelis were getting pummeled, dude. Obviously, Western media didn't report it, but they were.
How that guy's alive.
And I think that's a big reason why Trump is thinking twice before hitting them right now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Look, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, not if. But first of all, that I don't know how that guy's alive, because he's blown the lid on many things. And I never knew if everything he said was credible, but that's insane that you say that. And that adds up. And I believe that. I believe that completely, because it
connected the dots for me. Because like I was wondering, why the did they, like in my head, I was like, why did they end the war? You know, the Iranians could have done some serious damage, but now it makes sense that the Israelis, and I don't put anything past the Israelis as far as like using a nuclear bomb. They don't care, bro. They're a rogue nation that will do anything they have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. So that's why it's like it's a hard it's a fucking hard, it's a hard play, because you can't really tell Iran to give up all their. You can't really tell Iran to give up everything they have because they need to protect themselves because they know they can't trust you niggas or us. So, and then we know Israel is crazy, so they'll just fucking nuke whoever they want or do whatever they want. It's a hard. That's why it's like I see why he fake bombed them so that Israel will relax. But it just like I said, it's just kicking the fucking dirt under the rug. So I don't know. Mm. I just say my personal opinion. We just need to stay out the fucking Middle East. We need to stay out the Middle East, especially when it comes to dealing with Israel's opponents. They're really like hurting. They're making us look bad. They just keep continuous making us look bad. And what's gonna be even funnier is watch, guys. You heard it from me. I promise you. No IDF soldiers will be in Iran. I promise.
Perfect.
None. Okay?
Here's the state of the play. As you
And this is Nick talking about the Iranian drone. U.S. attacks Iranian drone. The U.S. attacking the Iranian drone.
know, there is another huge push for regime change happening, right now. Huge push. Netanyahu went to Mar-a-Lago on December 29th, pleading with Donald Trump to bomb Iran, and this time to bomb Iran's ballistic missiles, to bomb Iran's proxies.
And I think that's why the files came out, because he had said, hey, he went to Mar-a-Lago. He said, hey, I need you to bomb Iran. And Trump didn't bomb him. So he's like, fuck it. Now I'm finna drop some more shit, see if you're gonna bomb him now.
And effectively support a regime change war. This has been going on now for over a month. Shortly after that, there were these massive protests in Iran. Now, as I've said since the beginning of the year, it is very important to understand precisely what is going on here. These are not protests, okay? That's not what that was. People are calling it a spontaneous uprising in response to economic conditions, the collapse of the currency, run on one of the state-sponsored banks.
This is what Myron's brother was saying.
That was merely the pretext. The situation in Iran is that for years, Israel has been conducting industrial sabotage. They are bombing Iran's factories, oil refineries, ports, their electrical grid, their vital public infrastructure. The United States has waged an economic war on Iran. These maximum pressure tariffs have prevented Iran from selling its oil at market price, prevented Iran from doing trade with Europe and the United States or any of our major trading partners. And so this has put Iran in a situation. Their people have experienced rolling brownouts, unreliable electricity, water, shortages of essential supplies. Their currency has never been weaker against the dollar. This is a situation which has been manufactured. You understand this, right? Imagine if in the United States, every week and every day, there was a unexplained explosion at our factories, our meatpacking plants, on our farms, at your electrical grid, at a power plant. And imagine if your grocery stores weren't stocked, the shelves weren't stocked every day. And imagine if you turned on the faucet, there was no water, and you turned on the lights and there was no electricity. Well, understandably, people would be angry. People would grow tired of that. They would grow restless. And imagine if that was being inflicted on your country by an outside force. You wouldn't say that, oh, well, the people just decided to get up and riot one day. You would say that this is effectively a siege. This is a modern day siege. This is like the city is surrounded. The people are starving. They can't get anything, and they're being hit with flaming arrows every day. They're being hit with flaming rocks every day. That is what is going on. Simultaneously, Israel and the United States are backing operations inside Iran. What happened during the 6-day war with Iran last June, or excuse me, the 12-day war?
We already talked about it. Iran fucked Israel badly with the ballistic missiles.
What happened during the 12-day war between Israel and Iran last year? Israel didn't just bomb Iran's nuclear facilities, they also bombed Iran's internal security service. Why? Because in the event of an uprising, an insurrection, a protest, a foreign-backed uprising, it would be the internal security service that would put it down. It would be the internal security service that is looking for Mossad and CIA agents and hanging them. It would be the internal security service that is looking for the truck bombs and for the shipping containers that contain drones or missile launchers. In the event of an insurrection, it would be the security service that is responding to these coordinated attacks. So Iran's internal security was degraded heavily in the final days of the 12-day war. Now, what happens in the first week of January, while Netanyahu is at Mar-a-Lago, Netanyahu is there at Mar-a-Lago pleading with Trump to bomb Iran, all of a sudden you get this spontaneous uprising. They say it's because the economy is bad. But do you know what else is happening? In the west of the country, for the most part in the west, you have, and this is reported by reputable sources like the Financial Times and others, you have reports of men clad in all black with fully automatic rifles storming government buildings. This is happening in Iranian Kurdistan, which borders Iraqi Kurdistan. Do you know what's happening in Iraqi Kurdistan? Well, the United States is moving all of its troops from Baghdad to Iraqi Kurdistan. The U.S. isn't leaving Iraq. They're just going to the Kurdish part of Iraq because that is the part of Iraq that is semi-autonomous, effectively self-governing, independent from the central government in Baghdad. And the U.S. has bases there. The CIA, the DOD has made inroads there. They have allies there, and so has Israel. The Kurds are the closest ally of Israel and the United States. They're also bordering Azerbaijan, which is an ally of Israel, longtime intelligence and military supplying ally. Israel and Azerbaijan, Israel and Baku. So Iran's border with Azerbaijan and Iran's border with Iraq in the West is being flooded, is effectively being invaded by all of these operatives wearing all black, carrying automatic rifles with a plan, taking over government buildings. Now, what do you think this is? This is a systematic,
regime change.
multi-year regime change war. They got Trump elected the first time to rip up the nuclear deal so that we could destroy them with sanctions. And then Israel came in after the deal was ripped up and started doing industrial sabotage, sabotaging infrastructure. All this time, we have been furnishing the Kurds and Baloch separatists, Israel and the United States, with weapons. And so now that we have destroyed their nuclear facilities,
Their economy.
the two vital facilities in their nuclear complex at Natanz, Fordo, also Esfahan, now that that nuclear hedge is sufficiently weakened, now we're bringing the real economic pain. Now we're bringing in the ground force. What is going to be the ground force that overthrows Iran? Combination of Kurds, Baloch people, Turkic people, maybe people sympathetic to the old regime, the Shah, liberals, students, young people. That is going to be the ground force. And by the way, that was the same playbook in Syria. Exactly the same playbook. Do you know what happened in 2007 in Syria? In 2007, Israel suspected that Syria was working on nuclear weapons. So
Of course,
Israel
that's their
launched a
favorite- that's their favorite
unilateral
word.
airstrike, and they bombed Syria's nuclear weapons facilities. 4 years later, you get the Arab Spring, which starts in Tunisia, spreads across Libya, Egypt, then it goes right up into the Middle East, into Syria. And that's when the U.S. and Israel start funding al-Qaeda, start funding these Sunni extremists that just got finished with the civil war in Iraq.
Wait, guys. Wait, guys. Wait, guys. Wait, guys. Wait, guys. Wait, guys. 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 What? The U.S. was funding Osama.
They can do whatever.
Wrong video.
Start funding al-Nusra Front. We start funding the Peshmerga, the Kurds. And that was our ground force.
Y'all think he
the
did that?
U.S. was the air force. ISIS was the ground force. Al-Qaeda was the ground force. The Kurds were the ground force. And all the while, again, first, Israel took out their nuclear hedge. Then it was the insurrection, which was the ground force. Then it was the U.S., which was the air force, coupled with the crippling sanctions on the economy and oil. And that's how Syria in 2007 is solid under the Assad regime with a chemical and nuclear weapons arsenal, goes to a civil war in 2011, and the government is overthrown by December of 2024. It's the same playbook in Iran. Bomb the nuclear hedge, maximum pressure economics. We're going to now fund the ethnic separatists, these ethnic and religious minorities inside the country, the rebels, the moderate opposition that opposes Islamism, and we're going to be the Air Force. That's the play. That is what they're building here. That's the move. So Netanyahu comes to Mar-a-Lago for the 5th time. We need a war with Iran. What a coincidence. Just in time for the uprising, just in time for the most violent uprising since 2022, since the Green Revolution 15 years ago. And what made it the bloodiest revolution? It wasn't the biggest in scope. It wasn't the biggest in number. This was the bloodiest protest because it was effectively an invasion. It was masked, uniformed operatives, armed, storming Iranian government buildings.
Yeah, that's what Myron's brother was saying. I think he was saying the protests in Iran were all propaganda
to overthrow the government. And it looks like Iran shut it down. What did Iran do? They just started shooting these people. They put it down like they always do, violently. They crushed it. And you know what else they did? They shut off the internet. Now, curiously, when they shut down the internet, the whole thing stopped. Do you know who the internet provider was? It was Starlink. Elon Musk, one of the biggest defense contractors in the world, it was Elon Musk's Starshield, which is an extension of its Starlink program, was providing satellite internet to the protesters. Okay, so where's all this coming from? Where are the weapons coming from? Where's the internet coming from? Where is the economic pressure coming from? It's coming from here. It's coming from Washington. It's coming from Tel Aviv. Now, the protest was crushed. As you know, it was claimed that Trump was moments away from authorizing a strike on Iran. The jets were in the air. The bombers were in the air. We were ready to go and bomb Iran. But the strike was called off at the last minute. Why? Well, what they said is that we didn't have a big enough force package. We only had a few destroyers off the coast of the Middle East. I believe in the Eastern Mediterranean, although I'm not exactly sure the precise location. You had about a half dozen ships, including 3 destroyers.
But just imagine, you're seeing regime change in real time. They messed up the economy. They're bombing their infrastructure. When they start the fights in the streets, when they're rioting, the rioting is in black masked propaganda overthrowing the government, trying to get into government buildings. The only people who are getting internet link, the only way they can get internet is through Elon. I'm telling you, this is textbook regime change 101.
And that was not enough in terms of radar, early warning system, missile detection, but also
Perfect.
in terms of Minuteman missiles, Patriot batteries, also in terms of an Air Force. We did not have enough defensive and offensive capability forward deployed to engage Iran in any kind of protracted conflict. In other words, one, if we attacked Iran, it wouldn't be a killing blow. With only a handful of destroyers and the existing presence in the region, we could not launch a killing blow against the Iranian regime. And if we couldn't take them out, they would retaliate. And the retaliation would have been catastrophic because without warning, without Iran restraining themselves, we would have no way of knowing which targets they would strike, when, and whether they would use hypersonics, whether there would be some kind of forewarning. And we can't defend the whole Middle East at once. We can't defend all of Israel and our bases in Jordan and Syria and Iraq and Qatar and the Emirates. We can't defend the whole Middle East from a surprise missile attack, especially if it's overwhelming.
Not from Iran.
So it was said
Them niggas
that
got
Trump
missiles.
called off the strike at the last minute because it wouldn't topple the regime, and therefore it would lead to a retaliation which we were not equipped to defend against. Now, what is the implication of this? The implication is that Trump is apparently now seeking regime change. They buried the lead. Trump said, well, I was going to bomb Iran, but it wouldn't do regime change, so I called it off. And we're supposed to say, what a relief. My question is, regime change is the policy now? That wasn't the policy a year ago. That wasn't the policy during the election.
No new
In
wars.
the 2024 election, he said no new wars. A war with Iran is a pretty substantial war. It's 3 times the size of Iraq. It's got a population of 90 million. They have a 1 million man army. They've got thousands of missiles. They've got a navy. They've got a pretty serious arsenal. So Trump said during the election, no new wars. I guess regime change is now on the table. That's what we're planning. Even in 2025, when we engaged Iran, we engaged with them diplomatically over their nuclear program. We said, listen.
And then
we
Israel
want
went and
Iran
bombed
to
them
be integrated into the
while we
economy.
was
wanted to
engaging with them
normalize
diplomatically.
relations. And we said, you can even have a nuclear program. We said, the only thing is you can't enrich. We said, keep your missiles, keep your proxies. And as a matter of fact, keep Bushehr, keep your nuclear power plant. We said, but the enrichment needs to be overseen by us. So you can do it in Saudi Arabia. You can do it in an island. You can't do it there. And we bombed them, apparently, nominally, ostensibly, because they wouldn't give it up. And Trump declared victory because he said, well, now Iran can't enrich. So that is why that was heralded as a success. That was the pretext for it. They said it's their nuclear enrichment capability. Now it's regime change. So you go from no new wars.
Basically trying to
well, we need to bomb their nuclear enrichment.
basically trying to hold Israel back. And Ben said, nigga, I want to do this shit right now, which is why he dropped the Epstein files. And there's definitely more to be dropped. There's definitely more to come out from that too. So what's happening is Trump is being blackmailed basically to fucking go to war with Israel, with Iran.
And otherwise it's fine. To now, well, we can't bomb them because it wouldn't succeed in regime change. And at what point was that determination made? I guess that determination was made during that meeting. I guess Netanyahu made Trump an offer he couldn't refuse because that is where that decision was made, at least on our side. As I've told you, Israel has sought regime change from the beginning of the Iranian regime, but apparently this decision was made that we're going to act on this recently. So Trump called off the strike because we didn't have enough guns. Well, then Trump sought to remedy this. So we are sending a carrier strike group to the Middle East. That's 3 destroyers and the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, F-35 fighter jets, other strike aircraft. 50,000 soldiers, personnel are in the region right now. Military transport planes, cargo planes, refueling aircraft. We're moving in THAAD systems, Patriot missile batteries. We're putting a ton of force in the region, offensive and defensive capabilities to confront Iran. Now, the USS Abraham Lincoln just arrived in this theater of conflict last week, the closing days of January. It got as far as the Gulf of Oman. And Trump issued an ultimatum. Trump said on Truth Social, if Iran does not accede to our demands, then we will topple the Iranian regime. And the demands are Iran has to limit the range of its missiles such that they cannot reach Israel and reduce the number of missiles.
Basically, Iran has to open its ass so that when Israel's attacking, they can't fight back.
Demand is they have to stop all their support for their proxies, like the Popular Mobilization Force in Iraq, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the West Bank, the Houthis in Yemen. And lastly, most importantly, they would have to give up their stockpile of highly enriched uranium, give up their centrifuges, disclose the locations of the remaining nuclear facilities, and have the IAEA come in and oversee their dismantling.
And again, remember last time we tried to make a deal with Iran, Israel just bombed them.
These are the most maximal demands possible. We're effectively telling Iran they must make themselves defenseless. Iran is defiant. They say absolutely not. Well, it looks like Iran called Trump's bluff. Trump actually withdrew the USS Abraham Lincoln from the Gulf of Oman back to the Arabian Sea. There were some developments today that were a bit contentious. A couple of Iranian boats tried to seize a U.S. oil tanker, but they failed. At the same time, an Iranian drone, a Shahed drone, was surveilling the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Persian Gulf, in the Gulf of Oman, and an F-35 fighter jet shot down that Iranian drone. So we shot down an Iranian drone, and Iranian boats tried to seize and capture a U.S. oil tanker. So it looks like we are on the cusp.
Yeah.
We're locked and loaded. We have all these aircraft. We have all these defense systems in place. We have the carrier there. Trump has issued his demands. We have shot down an Iranian drone. But it all changed today when apparently there was a diplomatic breakthrough. And now Iran says that they are open to negotiating. Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia pleaded with the United States for Washington to negotiate with Iran. They don't want a war. And so these countries were begging us not to go to war. And it's pretty clear why. These are status quo powers. Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan are now forming a loose confederation with each other and with Iran on the basis that they are defenders of Islamism.
But after what did we bombed Qatar? After we bombed Qatar, they're like, damn, we can't really trust these niggas because if Israel say jump, America gonna say how high.
The basis that they are countering Israel.
So they all started coming together.
Countering the influence of the United States as well.
It's either after bombing Kuwait or
and
Qatar.
They want to stabilize the region. They don't want Iran to fall apart. Think about, for example, Saudi Arabia's plan. Under Mohammed bin Salman, they have a new plan that by 2030, they want to make the kingdom a destination for tourism. They want to make it a technological hub. They want to make it a transportation hub. Why? Because oil is going out of style. Oil is becoming cheaper, not more expensive. People are transitioning to renewables and other forms of energy. And Saudi Arabia knows that if its economic future is bound up with oil, that they can expect decreasing revenue in the future. The U.S. is now the number one oil producer by far. Russia's number two. We're discovering new energy all the time. There's this huge transition happening, getting us away from combustion engines and towards electric in China, in the United States, and Europe. So Saudi Arabia wants to transition from a petrostate to an economy based on tourism, technology, transportation. Well, it's hard to attract wealthy people and tourists if there's missiles hurtling at your country, if Iran implodes and there's a regional war and the Houthis are lobbing missiles at the eastern oil fields, at the eastern province, if they're lobbing missiles at Riyadh, if they're lobbing missiles at the Line and Jeddah Tower and at Dubai, this is bad for these countries. So they don't want that. They're trying to stabilize. They're begging the United States, please don't go to war with Iran or we're screwed. And every country has their own stake in this, but they made their appeal to Trump not to go to war. And so they scheduled a negotiation for Friday. It will be another indirect negotiation, just like last year. Last year, there were 5 rounds of talks between the special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and the Iranian foreign minister, Araghchi. And these were held indirectly in Oman, in other countries. And the way they did it is they had the negotiators in 2 different rooms, and they had intermediaries pass the messages along. The Iranians insisted, and it came from the Ayatollah, that the negotiations could not be direct. So like those negotiations, these will be indirect. They will be mediated by those countries, by Oman, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates. Initially, they were going to be held in Turkey. Now, apparently, they're being held in Oman. And there's some particularities about these negotiations. So again, the way that all of this started last year, you have to think about the various positions here. So what is Washington's beef with Iran? Our problem is their Iranian nuclear program, specifically their ability to enrich. And what does that mean? They take uranium.
Well, Israel's problem.
They subject it to this process. And when they achieve, I'm not a scientist, okay, but when they enrich it to a certain level of purity, they can use it in a nuclear bomb. So it is Iran's ability to refine plutonium and enrich uranium, which
they're doing because Israel has nuclear capabilities. So they're like, why the fuck would we not have nuclear capabilities?
Observation and supervision, without oversight, they could, if they so chose, build a nuclear arsenal. Now, the U.S., as the guarantor of world order and stability, facing no challenge from a great power rival, our biggest fear is that some revisionist power, some rogue state, will get a nuclear bomb, they'll get a deterrent, and then they could destabilize the world or threaten the United States. So we don't want any country to have this ability unless they have extraordinary U.S. oversight and assurances. So we don't want them to have enrichment. That's our red line. And that was a negotiation last year. We came to Iran and said, look, we don't want to talk about your missiles. We don't want to talk about your proxies. We don't even want to talk about nuclear energy. We want to strictly focus on enrichment. We said, keep your nuclear power plant, keep your other stuff, but you can't have highly enriched uranium and you can't have centrifuges. If you want to operate centrifuges, you can do so, but you got to do it somewhere else. Somewhere where we can watch over it and we can shut it down and we can control the flow of the enriched uranium. And it was their refusal to give up their ability to enrich which led to the war last year. Well, think of the starting point in the negotiations now. Trump's demands now concern 3 different files.
Don't forget, they didn't really finish the deals. Israel attacked them before the deal was finished.
There's the missiles, there's the proxies, and there's nuclear. We are now telling them you can't support the proxies, you can't have your missiles, and you can't have enrichment. Iran is not going to agree even to negotiate on the other things. For them, it is a red line to even discuss that. It's just not on the table.
Not after we
Iran
bombed
will
them
not
during
even
the last deal.
entertain the notion that they would ever stop supporting their proxies, that they would ever give up their missiles, because they see that as this enormous imposition. Iran has a right to defend itself. Israel is an aggressor. And in the end, Iran's missiles are the only deterrent from Israel attacking it. Iran's proxies are a deterrent, and they're a part of Iran's public diplomacy and their foreign policy. So they don't even want that to be a part of the discussion. But that is what Trump started with. Trump said, this time, you got to give up the missiles, give up the proxies, and enrichment. And Iran said, no way. No, that's not even on the table. Well, now they've agreed to negotiate. Why? Well, it's interesting. Steve Witkoff went to Israel today to speak with the Israelis, and he left that meeting and said, we only discussed nuclear. He said, when we met with the Israelis today, we didn't talk about missiles, we didn't talk about proxies, we only talked about nuclear. And so it seems that going into these negotiations, the United States has agreed that we will only talk nuclear. We're not going to talk about the other stuff. And on that basis, diplomacy can begin.
And I agree. I definitely agree with Nick. The only way we're going to be able to get out of this, because again, 12-day war happened because 12-day war happened because we was making a deal with Iran. Israel bombed Iran. Iran didn't want to fucking they didn't really have they didn't do nothing with the deal, so Israel bombed Iran. Iran started bombing Israel. Israel couldn't hold the fort, basically was getting screwed. Said, "Hey, y'all don't handle this. You don't bomb these niggas. We're going to nuke them." So America bombs Iran. Everything calms down. Israel's like, y'all didn't really bomb them. They're still doing what they're doing. We need you to tell them to stop. America's like, okay, I guess we'll try to tell them to stop. So here's the demands. Here's the demands that Israel will never take. Israel, of course, doesn't accept that bullshit. And not Israel. Iran, of course, doesn't accept that shit. And then Israel goes just and this is my speculation, though. I want to say Israel drops the files, and this is why we're moving forward on with doing what we're doing, because we weren't going to do anything before, and on December 29th, Bibi said we need to go to war. We need to have regime change with Israel when he went to the Mar-a-Lago. Trump's like, nah, we're not going to do that. Epstein files, some more files come out. Now we're doing it. So I feel like everything is connected. It's kind of easy to connect the things when you see when you're in behind the scenes and you're backstage. It's kind of easy to see the tricks, when you're the one, pulling the strings, and not necessarily pulling the strings, but you know what I mean. But yeah, it's looking kind of like we're gonna go to war with Iran, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. That kind of seems like it's inevitable. They're already trying to take our tankers. They're already trying to stop our tankers from going. We're already blowing up drones. It looks like war with Iran is gonna be imminent. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens in these couple of days. Is it a waste of resources for us? I want to say yes, because we don't need to be in the Middle East. But Israel's been trying to do this for the past decade, trying to get regime change in Iran. I just pray for my brothers out there on the field that are fucking in the military, because they are the ones who have to do this bullshit. And it's not, and that's what's so annoying, is because we're sending our soldiers. You will not see no IDF soldiers in fucking Iran. I promise you. You will not see no IDF soldiers in Iran. I promise. But yeah, appreciate for everybody for stopping by today. Nice little chill stream with Myron's bro breaking down the beginnings of what's going on, and Myron talking about it with him, and then Nick talking about it too. Yep. Well, we are in imminent danger of a war, so y'all just be paying attention to what's going on, and make sure you be careful out there. Yeah, Jesus Christ. I just telling you guys, we need to get APAC out of Gov. Zio's out of Gov. We need to get all that shit out of Gov. We need America only. Fuck America first. We need America only in Gov. Like, it's getting to the point where Israel is really getting whatever they want right now. We are not. We are not at all. We're the ones sacrificing it. So I appreciate y'all boys for stopping by. I will see y'all boys on Friday. Peace.
The bitch shaking it, showing it. You this, you that. We laughing at them together. Oh! So stop treating these like they mean something.
Let's go to TikTok.